them to be happy, and I want them to feel secure and safe, and I do not want them to worry another day, because I really am sorry for what I've done, for what I've taken of them. I cannot give it back, but I can try my best in the future to help other people, and that is what I will do.
It started with the sound of silence, the kind that settles right before something shatters. In the eyes of 15-year-old Ethan, the world had been ending for a long time. Quietly, slowly, but certainly. He walked into the bathroom that morning like any other, carrying with him more than a backpack. He carried a plan, one that had burrowed itself into every thought, every conversation, every sleepless night. When he stepped out, everything changed. He held an automatic weapon with the same familiarity someone else might hold a textbook. Without hesitation, he pulled the trigger, and the halls of Oxford High School erupted into chaos. Students screamed, fled, stumbled, cried. 4 of them would never walk out again. Among the victims were bright-eyed teenagers, kids who had dreams and lunch plans and college brochures in their lockers. Ethan moved with terrifying precision, walking the hall like he was checking boxes on a list. Each name, each face, each soul, reduced to a tally in his mind. Even when police arrived and he finally set the gun down, there was no remorse, no tears. Just a quiet, almost eerie surrender, as if this had always been the inevitable conclusion. What disturbed everyone wasn't just what Ethan did, but how prepared he'd been. In audio recordings later found, his voice calmly outlined his obsession. He'd thought about it for years. Guns, tactics, the feeling of power. Even as a child, he scribbled pictures of soldiers and dreamed of infamy. By the time he was 15, he wasn't dreaming anymore. He was planning. When they found those recordings, those drawings, those journals, it was like opening a doorway to a mind at war with itself, a battlefield fueled by resentment and delusion. Then came the court. He walked in as though he'd walked into a school play. No remorse, no apology. Just a boy whose future had already been replaced with cold metal bars. His parents, too, faced charges. They had known, investigators said, known about the signs, the weapons, the disturbing messages, yet they did nothing. After the shooting, they ran, hoping to disappear, but they were found. And now, just like their son, they sat in cells. 3 lives swallowed in a nightmare they helped create. But Ethan was just one name in a list that seemed to keep growing.
This entire community, I'm sorry to every single person I forced PTSD upon. I'm sorry to all the people who can't go out in public anymore. I'm sorry to the people who can't sleep at night in fear. I'm sorry to everybody who I stole their innocence and high school experience. I'm sorry to Gracie, Jordan, and Emma for the scars on their bodies and their minds that I can never erase or take back.
Caleb was another. Just 15 when he walked into Freeman High School with a similar plan, similar weapons, and an all-too-familiar expression. He killed Sam, his classmate, then injured 3 others. And yet, when he spoke in court, it was different. He apologized, not just to the victims, but to everyone who had lost something because of him. The quiet students who couldn't walk through a hallway without panicking, the ones who slept with lights on, the parents who wouldn't hear their children's voices again. Caleb said he was sorry, but his face didn't match his words. He looked empty, hollowed out by whatever had led him down this path. His parents stood by him, insisting he wasn't evil, just broken. By the time Caleb was sentenced, he was 20. He wouldn't be out until his 60s, if ever. The courtroom was heavy that day, not just with judgment, but with grief. Because no matter how many years they gave him, it wouldn't bring Sam back.
Guy Boucher says sickness drove him to plan a shooting at the school he used to attend, Forest High.
I got a sawed-off shotgun. I put it in a guitar case. And I also had a tactical vest filled with shotgun slug rounds.
Handcuffed and shackled inside Marion County's jail, he claims he's been treated for his mental health before, but wanted more serious attention paid to his problems now, saying taking lives wasn't part of his plan.
In Ocala, Sky Boucher made a different kind of noise. His bullet didn't kill, but it did wound. and it did terrorize. He claimed he never wanted to hurt anyone, just scare them. He said he was sick, desperate for help he never received. Sitting in a jail cell, shackled and exhausted, he said he wanted to be put somewhere safe, somewhere he couldn't hurt anyone else. When his trial finally ended, he took a deal. 30 years with parole possible after 25. By then, he'd be middle-aged. But the trauma he left behind in those halls would live far longer. They were all so young, kids really, but the devastation they left behind was immeasurable. Families torn apart, classrooms forever haunted, teachers quitting, students transferring, parents living with fear every morning they waved goodbye at the curb. And yet, each case seemed to blur into the next. Different names, same story, a teenager with a gun and a plan.
As soon as TJ Lane walked in, he was executing his plan, taking off his button-down shirt to reveal this, a white T-shirt with the word killer scribbled on it, showing it off with a smug smile on his face.
In the case of TJ, the courtroom became a stage for cruelty. He was only 17, but the moment he entered the room, he stripped off his shirt to reveal a white one underneath, scrawled with the word killer in black marker. He smirked, not a sign of regret, not a hint of empathy. The parents of his victims sat just feet away, trembling, grieving, and still somehow hoping that maybe they'd see a trace of humanity in the boy who stole their children. But they didn't. TJ didn't cry. He didn't explain. He didn't apologize. He just watched them with dead eyes, satisfied that he had become the monster they now feared. He was given 3 life sentences with no parole, but even that seemed inadequate to some. How do you measure justice when someone takes away a life so senselessly?
It was the apology and explanation from Barry Lukaitis that shooting victims and their families had waited for more than 21 years to hear.
All of you are good people, and hell is knowing that you have done something to good people, and that you can never make it right.
It's the same tragic melody repeated over and over with different names. Barry was just 14 when he stormed into Frontier Middle School with a gun. He killed 3 people and held a class hostage. One of his chilling remarks was, "This sure beats the hell out of algebra, doesn't it?" His story was one of a broken home, mental health issues, and a constant spiral into darkness. But that didn't save him. He was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 205 years. Later, after the law changed, his sentence was reduced slightly, but he'll still likely die in prison. When he apologized, it was genuine, but it was far too late. In Colorado, it was 2 teens.
We are following breaking news right now on CBSN Denver. The jury in Douglas County has found Devin Erickson guilty on all charges in connection to the 2019 STEM school shooting in Highlands Ranch. That includes the murder of fellow classmate Kendrick Castillo. He's already guilty of attempted murder and several other charges. Stay with CBSN Denver and watch CBS 4 News at 5 for the very latest.
Devin and Alec, who took violence to new levels. They entered their school with guns hidden in a guitar case and opened fire. One student, Kendrick, rushed toward the shooter and managed to stop him, but lost his life doing so. 8 others were injured. Kendrick was hailed a hero, the kind whose name would be remembered, not for the horror he witnessed, but for the bravery he showed. Devin was sentenced to life without parole. Alec, being younger, got a chance at parole, but not until after 4 decades. Their attempt to leave a mark ended in a legacy of grief and ruined lives.
Today in LA Superior Court, Spencer begged for mercy from Judge Edmund Clark Jr. before sentencing.
I'm sorry for what happened, Your Honor, but I need some life in prison. And I'm not a bad person, but I made mistakes. But I'm not just some gangbanger that she tried to portray me as.
Brandon was different. He didn't go after a school. His story unfolded at a Halloween party on a college campus, where a fight escalated into gunfire. 4 people were injured, no one died. And yet Brandon was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Some called it excessive. Others said it was justified. What stood out was Brandon's plea in court. Tears, regret, a desperate cry for understanding. His father spoke up for him, questioning the fairness of the trial, but nothing changed. The system had spoken. Brandon would serve his time, whether it was just or not.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds.
Nicholas's story was perhaps the most infamous. He walked into his former high school in Parkland, Florida, and began shooting minutes before the final bell. 17 dead, 17 more wounded. He fled in the crowd but was later found, emotionless and compliant. The trial dragged on, filled with gut-wrenching testimony. Parents cried. Survivors relived their nightmares. Nicholas never spoke a word of apology. The video he recorded before the massacre played like a horror movie. He declared he was nothing, that everything he held dear had been let go. He wanted to be remembered for destruction, for blood, for terror. The court ultimately gave him life in prison, not death. And for some, that was another wound. Parents said he didn't deserve to live when their children couldn't. Others said life in a cell was punishment enough, a life of isolation, of knowing he would never again walk free. The stories kept coming. Each time the disbelief returned. Each time the headlines screamed. And each time people asked how it could happen again, how a child could pick up a weapon and decide that death was the answer. Some blame parents. Some blame school. Some blame games, music, or mental illness. But no one really knew. No one ever truly does. All that remains is a long list of names etched into headstones and memorial walls. Teens like Ethan, Caleb, Sky, TJ, Demetrios, Barry, Nicholas. Names that should have belonged to athletes, musicians, doctors, and dreamers. Instead, they are remembered for the pain they caused, the fear they sowed, the lives they took. And behind them in every courtroom stood mothers and fathers, some weeping, some trembling with rage, some still in shock, wondering how their child became a headline, wondering if there had been a moment they missed, a warning they ignored, a second they could have changed, wondering most of all if there was ever any way to bring their children back.